at 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 35, what you are deciding to do is not what you're going to do for the rest of your life, most likely. Do not put that pressure on yourself that what you're deciding to do at 18, 19, 20, whatever age, is what you have to do for the rest of your life. There are so many stories that you've probably heard, and if you haven't heard them, just go back through the last several episodes of my podcast of several people who start doing one thing and end up doing something a little bit different, or they change direction. What you start doing does not have to be what you stop doing when it's all said and done. But really being consistent in what you know you're called to do, what you want to do, understanding your why.
Turn this up, turn this up.
Your professional development is one of the keys to your career success. When you combine your desire to grow with actionable steps, your journey to success becomes an incredible reality.
Hi, I'm Paul Faronbi, and welcome to IncrediPaul Leadership, where we learn how to become the most incredible versions of ourselves by learning from each other. So today, I'm going to be talking about leadership, as I do in most episodes, but specifically the journey to leadership. So you might be thinking, Paul, what do you mean by the journey to leadership? Another thing you might be wondering is, if you're watching on YouTube, where are you right now? This is not your normal background, and so I will clear the air. If you're just listening to this, you probably want to check out YouTube's a different background than normal. So when I recorded this, currently in transition mode, not in my regular studio, going to be in another studio/office I'll be recording in. So the next couple episodes going to look a little bit different. But the journey to leadership, what I'm talking about is that a lot of times leadership, actually all the time, leadership is a natural progression. That we have some instances where we are either thrust into leadership early on. It could be like leading a class project, leading a student organization or professional organization, or in your actual day-to-day job, you are considered a leader. But the steps you take to become a leader or become a proficient leader or an incredible leader are really intentional. So we need to understand this, take the proper steps. So I'm going to share some of the steps I've taken. I think everyone needs to take in leadership, and really in a lot of things, but especially in leadership. I'm going to share that a little bit later. So you want to stay tuned to the rest of this episode into that. But in the meantime, I'm going to talk it through my journey specifically, and then tie it into what are the specific steps that you need to take in your leadership. So throwing it way back to when I was growing up, for the longest time, I wanted to be a doctor. And I think the typical thing growing up, people are like, I want to be a doctor because they want to help people, care for people that are sick, all those things. And that was the same reasoning I had, is that I want to be a doctor because I want to help people. And I had that thought growing up, through high school, applying for colleges, so much so that I was applying for colleges, I said, well, I'm pre-med as a major, which as a young professional, you probably already know that pre-med is not a major. If you're in college right now, you should know that. Maybe you haven't declared your major yet, but pre-med's not a major specifically. I know you could be on a pre-med track. You still have to declare a specific major. So for myself, I thought, okay, biology or chemistry. And so as we're going through different college visits with family, I would say I'm doing biology or chemistry. And so it was kind of a pivotal moment for me as I was going to different college visits. I had a conversation with my dad, and he said, if for whatever reason you don't end up in engineering, or not engineering, I'm jumping forward because I'm an engineer right now, you don't end up as a doctor, is a biologist or chemist what you want to do? Because that's what you're declaring as a major. That's what you're going to end up doing. Which now I know that depending on your major, you don't necessarily have to end up doing that. But that's another story for another episode, maybe a 6-minute Saturdays episode. So I said, no, like it's really doctor or bust. And it's a good thing. From there, I did some introspective thinking about what did I actually want to do? And I thought about, okay, I've always loved math and science. Specifically, I love math and I really loved chemistry. So I thought math, chemistry, chemical engineer. And really, I will say I did not think much more past that. Chemical engineer. And I also thought, okay, maybe biomedical engineering. I was between those two. What I ended up choosing was chemical engineering because I went to Iowa State University. They did not have a biomedical engineering program. They had a biomedical engineering minor, or I think at that point it was like biological sciences or something, and then biological engineering kind of came out of it. And so I focused on that. And even the reason I went to Iowa State in the first place was because there was an opportunity for me to do research the summer before I actually entered into school. And so that really started my journey towards where I am right now. So spoiler alert as far as what I'm doing right now, I work in R&D. So I work in research and development as a process engineer for Mars Incorporated. And so that's still relatively new, just a few months in now. But it was something that was planted early on as doing academic research at Iowa State. But let me walk you through what happened. So like I mentioned, I was doing this summer program, still thinking I was going to want to become a doctor, going to med school, fellowships, all of those things. What ended up happening is that I was doing biomedical research in conjunction with a biology lab, chemical engineering lab, trying to regenerate nerve cells. So it was really fascinating research. Learn a lot. I won't bore you with the jargon about it, but really trying to use these adult stem cells, so ones that are not invasively taken, adult stem cells, and transform them into kind of like neuron-like stem cells to regenerate nerve cells. So, are you looking for a place to continue to grow and develop, especially in your leadership? How about connecting with others who feel the same way? Hi, I'm Paul Faronbi, aka IncrediPaul, and I've got great news for you. The IncrediPaul community is for people who desire to become the most incredible versions of themselves. The community is for individuals who are goal-driven and action-oriented. This community is dedicated to leadership and personal growth, especially in going deeper in your career, starting a business, or developing a business. Join me in becoming the most incredible version of yourself. Go to IncrediPaul.org/community to join the waitlist and sign up. IncrediPaul.org/community. Join the waitlist. I can't wait to see you there. Really fascinating stuff. I got to do a lot more than most people who are chemical engineering majors as far as on the biology side and the biomedical side. So it was really, really exciting work. Got to still connected with my principal investigator or PI, Dr. Don Sakaguchi and Dr. Surya Malapragada. So get to talk to them, connect with them when I go back to Iowa State for different things. They are phenomenal people. They're really the foundation of everything that I'm doing right now, was getting that experience in research. So I was able to do undergraduate research all 4 years, 8 semesters, specifically say 8 semesters, because I had a break in there because I did a co-op. So if you're familiar with co-ops in engineering, I think they're a little bit more common, where you take a semester off school, you have to work for a company. So for me, it's 7 months, so January through the end of July, work for a company, work for Cargill in Wichita, Kansas. And so that was a brand new experience for me. Prior to that, I really had only worked in research, and I'd done research in this particular lab like all throughout the semester. I spent a summer of research after my sophomore year. After my freshman year, I took a break, took a class. But now looking back, that summer after my freshman year was the only time I really had a break in between years of school. So I did that. And then with Cargill, I was in Wichita. And then the following year, I was able to do an internship with Nestle USA. So at some point in some episode or 6-Minute Saturdays, I'll do a breakdown more on manufacturing, because it is big and there's so many things going on in manufacturing that you don't realize, that different companies are all, there's not as many companies as you may think. There's a lot of different brands, but it may be owned by the same company or acquired by the same company. So I work for Nestle USA in Jonesboro, Arkansas. So I got to spend a summer in Arkansas working really as a project engineer. So I got to work on a lot of different things, capital projects, which means like a lot of money involved, hundreds of thousands of dollars involved, working with a project engineer. And there's a couple other interns as well. And really great experience. So prior experience at Cargill was more large scale, like industrial type stuff. So working with, it was a soybean refinery and crush facility. So you get the soybeans in, it gets crushed into soybean meal that's given to farmers, as well as crude oil. And then on the other side, I got to see more on the finished product, like the consumer side. So working on frozen food brands that you probably know and maybe love, hopefully know and love, the Stouffer's and Le Cuisine brands. So that was really cool, seeing the different pastas, lasagnas, lean pockets, not the lean pockets, but like the paninis, like kind of those, the pizza things. So that was a really cool experience. And like I mentioned, throughout this, I was also heavily involved in research. So that's a little bit a picture of me, like from trying to figure out what I was going to be doing to getting into some more of the career stuff, experience stuff. And so you might wonder, like, how does that have to do with my journey to leadership? Well, even to get into these different organizations that I work for, I had to have the right experience. And I know a lot of times, because I see it on LinkedIn, there's memes about it. They talk about, I don't have a job because I don't have experience. Like, I can't get experience because I don't have a job. And then this whole loop that goes round and round, vicious cycle, so to speak. And so how, as a young professional, or especially as a college student, do you get experience when you can't get a job? Enter professional organizations or student organizations, depending on where you're at. Definitely a student organizations is a good one. That's where you want to start. But even as a professional, get involved in professional organizations. So that was something that stuck out to recruiters, and hiring people from different companies was what I was doing. Not only was I a member of organizations, I was actually participating in that. So I got to participate and hold leadership positions in the National Society of Black Engineers. So shout out to NSBE. I'm a lifetime member, so really love that organization. Also wasn't part of Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. I do not have a drop of Hispanic blood in my body, but I was really involved with that organization, really connected with the La Familia that they talk about, really felt accepted and held. I was really, besides my freshman year, from sophomore year, I was involved in fundraising, and as a fundraising chair, involved as a treasurer for like 2.5 years. And at one point, they actually wanted me to become president. And I just thought, I think that would be great, but I also had other things I wanted to do. And I know for me, and they told me this was an issue, but I didn't speak Spanish. And I feel like if you are you are representing an organization geared toward Hispanic people, you should probably speak Spanish. So for those reasons, I didn't end up doing it. And the other part was I was involved in iResearch, which was student organization specifically geared towards people doing research. And so that was through an organization, LSAMP, or in Louis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation. My local alliance was is Inspire. And so they sponsored that, and we were able to get people to get involved in that. I was the founding member. I was the treasurer for that organization for a year. I became the president, was able to pass that on. And so that was really the foundation of building my leadership skills. And the building the leadership skills helped me in my professional life and also in my personal life. Because a lot of times we hear the word leadership and it's easy to write it off and say, like, well, I don't have a leadership skill, or I don't have a leadership title, more so. So I'm not a leader. Absolutely not. The number one leadership guru in the world, John C. Maxwell, says leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less, quite frankly. And so I am a Maxwell Leadership certified coach and speaker and trainer. And it's something that I really focus on when I'm talking to students and young professionals in STEM is understanding that the leadership skills are needed regardless of if you have a leadership position. Think back to anytime you were either in a project or a team of some sort, and think about those people that you looked up to and admired. Those people were leaders. They influenced you in some way, whether it was actively trying to get the team on board, shared to a common vision or goal, or it was just the way that they did things. And so, like, throughout these different episodes, if you're newer to IncrediPaul Leadership, welcome. I'm glad you're watching or listening to this. But if you've seen any other episodes, what you notice is that a lot of people on the show talk about different people who have come alongside them, mentored them, and given them opportunities to grow. And so when I talk about being the most incredible version of yourself, that is something that only you can define. And so I purposely leave it like that. It'd be really easy to say, well, someone who's incredible has made $1 million or has 100,000 followers on social media or is doing XYZ, these things. No, that is not what it is. And so, yes, I have had people on the podcast who are millionaires. I haven't had a billionaire on here yet. May not happen. It's not my goal to have a billionaire on here. More so, I want to show you that there are different ways that you can go about your leadership to be incredible, develop your personal growth. So I mentioned that because I was talking about my journey to leadership, what I've done, different experiences, and really understanding that it is a journey. I mentioned at the beginning that I was focused on becoming a doctor, and doctors are great, nurses are great, healthcare professional is phenomenal. I mean, my wife's a nurse, tells me stuff all the time, and all the stuff that she does, like just the grace that to do that stuff. So as a person of faith, I just know that it just takes special people to be able to be surrounded by literally people who are dying that may not see the next day, and you're caring for them. It takes emotional toll, and we talk about it, we pray about it. But so my heart goes out to people in the medical field, especially nurses. All that to say, this is a journey. It's going to look different throughout your career, throughout your life. Different things may or may not go as you want them. And so specifically in my career, it was that story was the case. So I mentioned I wanted to do, after becoming a doctor, doing research, get into industry, I quickly realized, okay, doctor, I want to do that to help people, but that's not the only way to help a people or a person, individuals. I can also help them through research. And so what I realized is that research is something I'm passionate about, but industry and being able to see my product or to see the things I'm working on in stores, because the fact that you can see like, oh, like I was in the factory, in the plant. They were making this Stouffer's lasagna, or I worked on putting this new conveyor in, and that's going to help with the throughput or the reliability, whatever it is. But I can actually see the stuff that I'm working on in stores, and that was something that mattered to me. So enter CPG space. So this stuff in Nestle. After school, I got into other organizations, and I've talked about like failure, being rejected, redirection. So you might wonder, I went from Cargill to Nestle to General Mills. Why that? Well, Cargill, I had a co-op. Didn't usually you get an internship afterwards. Was not invited back for whatever reason. Then I got an opportunity to work with Nestle, which actually was something I wanted to do. Like I mentioned, see my product in stores. So that rejection from Cargill led to what I wanted to do with Nestle. Then after the internship, I'm laughing because it's like I just see how the threads of God working things out for what I wanted, not necessarily what I wanted, but what I needed, and able to get to where I wanted to go. So with Nestle, it didn't work out. They were restructuring their early career program, and there were 40 interns. They only offered it to 20. And even throughout that process, like in the summer, I had applied to a job in another business segment within Nestle, which actually happens to be one I ended up working for. So it's kind of funny looking back. So they figured, actually talking to my boss later on, that I was not going to be interested in working for them in that program. So they just didn't extend me an offer, which they never told me that, but that's what I found out later on. So with that, I had to look for other opportunities. Was able to land at General Mills, moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, was there for almost 2 years. Got to build a lot of great relationships with people there. Still in contact with a lot of them, whether directly sending text messages or on social media. I'm sure some of them are listening to this episode. So if you guys are listening to this episode, shout out to ABQ, Christmas all day, Greta, red and green chilies. I miss that stuff. If you're not from the Southwest or know anything about New Mexico, you definitely want to check out that area. New Mexico being the land of enchantment. Some people call it the land of entrapment, depending on who you're talking to. But yeah, shout out to my people out there. So I was at General Mills and really was still focused on working in research and try to make strides in that area. I was connecting with people, networking with people. I actually got to connect with people in R&D who were giving me advice on what steps to take, experiences to get, and I was actually working towards that. But then my manager at the time was not allowing me to do those things that I wanted, and went into a different rotation that wasn't really aligned with my long-term goals. And ultimately, I was still trying to make it work and stay with General Mills and go to Minneapolis ultimately because that's where R&D was at their headquarters. And what ended up happening was as I was applying to different jobs, saw this opportunity with Nestle Purina, which actually I had applied to 2 years earlier while I was still a summer intern for Nestle USA. And it was in St. Louis, Missouri, which I grew up in St. Louis, know the area, know the company, like in St. Louis, like downtown near the ballpark, and see the Purina building, all the things. And so I applied to this position, go through the process, make it to the final interviews, think everything is great, rejected. Yeah, rejected. And so for those who know me, you think about, what do you mean rejected? You worked for Purina. Yes, I did work for Purina for 4 years, but the first time I interviewed with them, I actually got rejected. And it's funny because the position I got rejected for, I actually ended up getting later and worked with the person who had the position. So it's funny, and we talk about it. So if he's listening, like we talked about it, that it didn't work out in that position, but like Purina, at least at the time, was really good about understanding people who are fit for the culture, not necessarily made that position because that person, the other candidate, had more direct experience. And so they had him in that position, and they said, keep in contact, stay in touch. We still think you're good for Purina. And so I was able to find something else in continuous improvement. And then really coming in, I made it clear that, yes, I'm coming in as continuous improvement. Long term, I want to get into more the technical route, really ultimately R&D, research and development, which I quickly learned that depending on the company, R&D or research looks a little bit different from company to company. And so that was my goal. I was a continuous improvement. I worked towards the technical side. I was on the packaging side for about a year, and that's where I worked with the person who got the job instead of me. And then I went to the process side because I thought, okay, let's work towards kind of similar to my background, chemical engineers, I ended up as process engineers, chemical process engineers, all the things. But throughout this time, I was traveling a ton. So anywhere from 75% of time to 80, 90% of times, there are actually two different stretches where I went 11 straight weeks traveling for different projects. One of them was on the continuous improvement side, the other one was on the packaging side. To say it was stressful would be an understatement, but at the same time, I came to embrace the stress and actually thrived in it. I will say it was a little bit of a different time because I was not married. I was dating my wife at the time, but we were long distance, so did not see her every day. We talked pretty much every day or texted or FaceTime, whatever. But we were not physically in the same city, so it was a lot easier to manage. Fast forward to about 3.5 year mark when I'm with Parina, we get married and quickly realized that married life, I need to just understand what married life looks like. And like me traveling all the time is making it very hard for me to realize that and get better at it. All those things. Like you ask anyone who's married, you're constantly learning, growing, all those things. And so what ended up happening is that I threw out some hints out there that like the travel piece was not working out. I wanted a little bit less. And then eventually through a strange set of circumstances, I was actually got an offer for another position that was still in St. Louis. That was a promotion that wouldn't be traveling at all. So at that point, I wasn't so sure about do I not want to do I want to just not travel at all? Because I knew I just wanted to travel less. So talk with people at Purina, tried to figure out is there a way for me to stay with the company, even like in R&D or something engineering, because I didn't want to leave at the time. It just didn't work out. There's nothing available. I took this other position. Really, it was a leap of fate because it was in continuous improvement, which is something that I've gravitated to and I think is foundational, but it's not something I want to like only work in. I think continuous improvement works well coupled with other things. And yes, there's some people that work in that area and want to work only in continuous improvement and training it, which I like it on the digital side and train it, but I like to apply it more than only be in that area. So I did that with the understanding that I really still wanted to move towards research and development, R&D. Tried to do that with the organization at the time, did not work out. And I would say like the organization I was at was under some leadership stress. Is the best probably way to put it. Like there's a lot of high turnover. People have not been there that long, at least from the leadership side. On the floor side and the union, a lot of people have been there for a while, and there's a disconnect between them. And so what I ended up doing was for me and the culture that I was looking for, it was not the right fit. So was looking for other opportunities, interviewed with a lot of different companies, had a couple different offers that didn't really pan out either geographically or financially that I ended up turning down. But finally was able to land on between one on the project side and one on the R&D side. And then I thought back to what I always wanted to do, which was research in a CPG company or research in industry. And so that made the decision very clear that, okay, I'm between two different ones. The one that's on the project side is potentially going to pay me more, but this other one is something that I've really wanted to do for a while. It was more of a lateral move. And so I ended up choosing that. I'm currently working as R&D process engineer with Mars. So that's kind of the story about what I've done so far with my career. And then even what you've seen with IncrediPaul, all of this was going on really in the middle of when I was at Purina as a continuous improvement side of things. So this episode really is an ode to IncrediPaul as a whole, because this week celebrating 4 years of IncrediPaul. Are you wondering what's next? Has everything you tried failed? Or maybe you just feel stuck? and coaching might be right for you. The coaching relationship is a relationship totally centered on you. If you're tired of running on the hamster wheel of life and want to start to see results, reach out to IncrediPaul for help. So what are you waiting for? Go to IncrediPaul.org/coaching, IncrediPaul.org/coaching, or at I am IncrediPaul on all my socials. Or you can click the link in the bio for your free coaching session. I want to make sure you become the most incredible version of yourself. And so IncrediPaul has looked different throughout the years. And it really more started off as stuff I was doing for free through what is now a nonprofit with Inspire, with what I did with the Louis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation. And so that is something that came from IncrediPaul. But before I dive into kind of like the journey of IncrediPaul, I'm going to take a step back and talk through the journey of leadership. And I think there's really three key things to this: is understanding your why, knowing your what, and then being consistent. And there's a lot of other things that go into it, but those three are foundational things. So first one, understanding your why. What inspires you to do what you do? What inspires you to do what you do? What is your why? So I've talked about before, and I feel like I talk about it all the time, but depending if you've seen the episode, this might be the first time you're hearing it, so I don't want to gloss over it. Understanding Your Why is a great book by Simon Sinek, who's a phenomenal leader, called Start With Why. And really, it talks about knowing what your purpose is, what you feel like if you're a person of faith or more spiritual or religious, what you're called to do. If you maybe religion or spirituality is not your thing, it's just what you feel like you need to do, what gives you your life meaning, so to speak. And so think about that. The reason you need to start with that is because we can end up doing a lot of different things, get caught up in the moment, the urgent, and not really understand why we're doing things. And John Maxwell talks about this, is that if you don't take control of your calendar and what you're doing, other people can take control of it. And so you need to be intentional, and really understanding your why is critical. And so for me, my why, I realized, was helping young professionals. And why young professionals specifically? And really, young professionals, I'm not even going to put a specific age to it, but if I was to put an age, I would say people like between 18 to 25, young professionals. So like college age through your mid-20s. And that age specifically because you don't know what you don't know at that age. And so, I mean, there's still a lot of things I don't know that I don't know for everyone, but specifically that age when you're doing your career, trying to understand what you want to do with your rest of your life, which I'll take a minute right here to just say at 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 35, what you are deciding to do is not what you're going to do for the rest of your life, most likely. Do not put that pressure on yourself that what you're deciding to do at 18, 19, 20, whatever age, is what you have to do for the rest of your life. There are so many stories that you've probably heard, and if you haven't heard them, just go back through the last several episodes of my podcast of several people who start doing one thing and end up doing something a little bit different, or they change direction. What you start doing does not have to be what you stop doing when it's all said and done. You don't have to stay in something because it's your specific degree or anything like that. Yes, having a degree helps you get directed in a specific way, but what matters more is your life experiences and professional experiences. So if you looked at my professional experience, you would wonder, how is this person doing speaking and coaching? But all the stuff I do outside of work, with the difference to an organization, professional organization, is that why. Next thing is know the what. What are you good at? What can you develop? A lot of times with talent, we think that talent doesn't have to work hard. But I want to counter that thought process. If you have a talent in some area, you need to work harder than anyone else. Why? When you have a talent in that area or in any area, what that means is that you're going to get multiplication faster or more abundantly than anyone else. So think of professional athletes, professional musicians, or really anything that people do at professional level. They will tell you that they put in several hours of work every day. And it seems like it's just natural. And they might have some natural inkling in that direction, but that does not mean they're not putting in the effort over and over again. And so what you need to do, look at what you're good at and how does that correlate with your why. And so what I realized with myself helping young professionals is that what I'm good at is really connecting with people. Maybe you can put it as networking, but really it's a connection piece. I have this ability, and I've just realized it's a God-given ability. It's not something I gave myself. Is that I can often put myself in another person's viewpoint, and so it's not only putting myself in another person's shoes, because I think when you're trying to look at someone, maybe it is putting myself in another person's shoes, but I can almost think about something the way someone else is thinking about it from their own viewpoint. Because I think there's a danger in when you're trying to understand things from your own viewpoint and your own understanding. Like, yes, that is valid, but people have different ways that they see things, and everyone is a hero in their own story. So think about I won't belabor this too much, but think about the most negative thing in history or in that you've ever heard of. And that person, in their own mind, what they were thinking, they think that they were doing something that was good. And so, as a person of faith, I definitely believe that God is good and God has morality and all that stuff. And that's how we can really understand between what's good and bad. Otherwise, if there is no God, like, how do you understand what's good and understand what's bad? It's just subjective at that point. I won't get too much into that. Basically, to say, like, I'll just understand that everyone's a hero in their own story. So people are doing things not necessarily because they think they're trying to harm you in a way. Sometimes people are, but for most part, they think they're doing the best thing that's going to make the world better, even if it's just maybe their own world. So, but think, just going back, understand your why, what inspires you, know your what. What are you good at? Try and marry those two things together. Third thing, be consistent. Be consistent, be disciplined. So a lot of times people ask me, like, how do you keep going and doing stuff? And first off, you need to understand your why. Like, if you don't have a why, and I think having multiple whys is important too. So I said helping young professionals. Also, I want to be known as someone that leaves a positive impact on someone's life that really brightens their day, whether it's to bring a smile to their face from just the interaction, because one of my gifts is encouragement, or to actually add something of value that's going to help them be the most incredible version of themselves. So that's another why. Another thing is just to be on the financial side, be able to provide for myself and my family. And so being financially independent of my job. And so I'm still working full time and I love what I'm doing. It's something I've been wanting to do for a while. But at the same time, I know that I'm not only tied to the job. There's other things I want to do, other things I want to be able to give, accomplish, spend my time. And so the job, like, it takes up 40 plus hours during the week. So then there's only so much I can do with that. And that's okay right now. But long term, I know that I want to be able to do more and have more influence and do more things. So being consistent. As far as for me, it is doing leadership things, going to leadership conferences, actively leading. So whether that's in my organization, in my company, with different projects, or outside of that, the stuff I do with the podcast, Nala STEM, which I don't think I really talk much about it. I'm trying to talk more about it now, just to realize that yes, anyone who watches or listens to this podcast, you see all the stuff I do with the podcast, with leadership, with coaching, with speaking. But a lot of stuff I do is behind the scenes that you may not, if you're not in that world, you're not going to see it. NALA STEM is a national alliance leading acceleration of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And so recently I learned that a lot of people, when they hear STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, if you're not in that area, maybe you think it's just more so for kids or children. But no, STEM is on the professional side as well. These different organizations, professionals that you could get into, whether people know about engineering, but on the academic side as well, just learning about different phenomenon, different techniques. So engineering is more on the application. How are we going to use this in different things? But then STEM as a whole, just understanding how our world works. So and that's the interesting thing about research, is that it's testing, it's failing, it's just doing it over and over again, learning how to communicate it effectively. So that's one thing, but really being consistent in what you know you're called to do, what you want to do, understanding your why. And so I think one thing people can relate to is with exercise, with losing weight, eating right. So you can see that from me, just from watching this podcast. So if you're listening, this is a second where you should go and actually watch this podcast. So look at this episode, look at what I look like for this episode, and then just go back to episodes from last year. So from episodes really from 15 to 30, and just compare the difference side by side. And we'll see if in post-production maybe we can get something in there, kind of a comparison side by side. You can see it. I think you can see it more in my face, but lost over 50 pounds in the last year. And people ask, how did you do it? What did you do? What was your secret? There is no secret. It's more from consistency. So like I mentioned, I used to travel a ton, did not necessarily eat the best, or ate late. So I started to make changes and was consistent with them. The first thing I really did was intermittent fasting. I did that and would have a specific time I stop eating when I start eating, and that helps. But then also what I need to do was start to eat better, eat healthier as well. And in addition, with intermittent fasting, eating healthier, other piece is to exercise regularly. So for me, that meant getting in the gym 4 to 5 times a week to lift weights. And then outside of that was cardio, which for me, cardio just means walking. I do not like running. I tell people that I'm built for short distances, not long distances. And I like running in a sport, but running on a treadmill or just running just for sake of running, I really don't like. But walking, I can do all day, every day. So I focus on walking more, focus on lifting weights, building muscle, which honestly, I had been lifting weights since I was 15, so it's not something that was foreign to me. It's just that I guess from relationship weight and getting married, I just kind of has slipped and put on more excess weight that was not needed. So that's an example of being consistent. You can see it for myself specifically. But really from this episode, what I want you to understand is that leadership, as with most things, is a journey. Where you are right now is not what you're going to be in the end. What you do have to understand is you need to be intentional. This whole idea of intentionality is something that I hope is prevalent in everything I'm doing, either on the podcast or if you hear me come speak, or even with coaching one-on-one. Because if you're not intentional with something, how can you ever say that you are getting the results that you want? You need to be intentional about what you're striving to do, what you want to do, what you're seeking to do. That's the only way you can truly be incredible.
Be sure to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'll see you here next time. And be incredible. Incredible.